You haven't quit your bad habits yet because you haven't accepted the reality that despite how judgmental you feel towards yourself for still doing this bad habit, your bad habits are useful. In other words, they serve the purpose of meeting your psychological needs or soothing you from the discomfort you feel from your psychological needs being unmet. And until you first of all enact the curiosity to become aware of what psychological need of yours this bad habit is meeting, and then enact the creativity to proactively change how you meet this psychological need, you have no choice but to continue to do your bad habits. Because the most fundamental pillar of human psychology that we all stand on is we want to pursue pleasure and avoid pain. And knowing that there are needs of yours that are going unmet causes a lot of pain that we naturally want to escape from by doing our bad habits. That is the main summary of this video. So if after what I've just said that resonates and you feel equipped to go back out into the world and quit your bad habits, feel free to end the video right now. But if you would like a little bit more of an exploration into this is what we're going to cover throughout the rest of the video. So feel free to stay. But before we go any further, let's zoom out a little bit and consider the bigger picture here. Why am I stood in front of this whiteboard recording a video on this topic about bad habits when it wasn't even in my upload schedule and is completely unscripted? Well, it's because a few days ago I received an email from a young man who's a subscriber of this channel. And in the email, which was very long and articulated very deeply about a psychological problem he was going through, I was offered the opportunity to realise something that felt like a slap in the face. What this young man articulated was, first of all, Lewis, I really appreciate your content, but for the last 4 years I have been struggling like hell with the bad habit of watching porn and whisking an omelette. In other words, fapping. And as funny as that may sound, the young man continued by saying, it's really starting to eat away at my life and it's becoming a huge problem for me. And worst of all, I've watched all of your content about addiction, how to overcome bad habits, and I've read all of your newsletters on the topic as well, but I just cannot seem to apply this knowledge practically to my life. What do I do? So upon reading his final part of the message, I felt very angered and annoyed because I have the need for clear communication, and he helped me realise that up until this point I haven't been articulating myself in a clear way about how to quit your bad habits, otherwise he wouldn't have emailed me with this problem. So I wrote back to this young man with the perspective in mind of someone having a gun to my head, demanding that I give them the most concise and high value answer on how to overcome their bad habits. And I wrote back very simply by saying, listen mate, forget about all of the complex psychological topics of how to quit addiction and overcome your bad habits. You're watching porn for a reason. And you have to find out what it offers you that keeps you coming back. What need of yours is porn and fapping your little wiener doing for you. In other words, porn isn't the problem. The bad habit isn't the problem, it is a symptom of a deeper problem. And until you find out what that deeper problem is, you're not going to know how to go about changing it. To zoom out of the context quickly of that very specific case of fapping, your brain didn't evolve to eat junk food. It evolved to consume calories, which then resulted in you being able to expend energy or to self-soothe. Your brain didn't evolve to watch porn, it evolved to procreate and bond with another human being in a relationship and to feel touch and affection and all of that stuff and release. Your brain didn't evolve to scroll or watch video games or play video games or watch Netflix all day. It evolved to emotionally regulate and disassociate at times. And finally, your brain didn't evolve to smoke cigarettes, smoke weed, or drink alcohol. It evolved to relieve stress. And at the heart of all of these examples, as evolutionary as they are, but applicable to the modern day, what you can find as you peel back the onion of the deeper psychological layers of why this bad habit in your life exists, you will find that in some way this bad habit helps you with emotional regulation. And to apply this two-step process that we mentioned at the beginning until you find out whether It is in fact emotional regulation that this bad habit helps you with, or self-soothing, or procreation, or bonding, or staving off the feeling of loneliness, until you become aware of what that need is, and then actively and creatively work to meet that need in another way. You won't quit your bad habit. Now we're going to deep dive into this a little bit more in about a minute's time. But just before we go any further with really explaining how needs work and to give you an illustration of them on the board so you're equipped with the knowledge of how to meet them, let's quickly touch upon the biggest enemy we're up against here when it comes to quitting bad habits. Because what you need to do in order to first of all become aware of what need of yours this habit is meeting, you need two things. Oh, we're freestyling on the board. You need the humility to admit that this thing is a problem in your life, which takes the skill of admitting, I'm in a bad place right now, I'm really struggling with something. That takes a lot of humility to do, but the most important part of becoming aware of what need of yours this habit is meeting is you need curiosity. But the enemy of curiosity is the J word. And no, it's not Jingle Bell. It's judgment. Carl Jung, a famous psychoanalyst from about 70 or so years ago, famously said, "You cannot change something until you accept it. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses." Which highlights a very pervasive problem when it comes to overcoming your bad habits in our society, culture, and the content that we consume. I'm going to make an arse out of you and I by assuming that, based on the fact you're a subscriber of this channel and you're here with me watching a video such as this about psychology and self-improvement, you likely consume other videos and content about self-improvement and psychology. But the biggest problem that this creates is the subliminal messages we're fed about how we should interpret ourselves because we're fallible human beings and we do our bad habits. You go online nowadays and you're flooded with Instagram posts and YouTube shorts and filtered perspectives of other people's lives who seem to live perfect, infallible lives where they never put a foot wrong, they never make a mistake, and they never do one of their bad habits, which makes you feel as if you're the only person in the world who is struggling with this bad habit, which makes you develop a negative relationship with yourself through the lens of judgment. So the self-destructive cycle of your relapse into your bad habit begins or continues. Who knows how long it's been going for. First of all, you relapse into your bad habit, no matter what it is. It could be something like junk food, PMO, video games. Naturally, on a personal level, you feel guilty for doing this bad habit because you know you have transgressed one of your principles and rules. It's a very healthy emotion to feel. Guilt, it is what sparks in your mind as the message as to say, hey man, we did something wrong, let's not do that again, so let's analyse what happened so we can be more productive in the future. You then feel guilty, but because of this content that you're absorbing of other people and their perfect lives, and it feels as if they never put a foot wrong, because you've done your bad habit, you then feel judgmental towards yourself as well as guilty. You feel that because you're scrolling, you're an unproductive, lazy sack of potatoes. Because you're eating junk food, you're just an unhealthy, fat slob equivalent to Jabba the Hutt or what have you. Because you fap as a young man, you are fed with all of this masculinity content, which now makes you feel horrible because you're like, oh no, I'm not a top 1% man or what have you. No fault of your own, by the way, it's just all of these subliminal messages. So you now feel judgmental for doing your bad habit. Which makes you feel very, very uncomfortable, emotionally, spiritually, physically, what have you. And what do us humans do when we feel discomfort? The alarm bells start ringing and we want to escape it. And what is the one way we know how to escape our discomfort? After years of rehearsal of this pattern. you do your bad habit again. And the cycle continues until your relationship with yourself decreases and decreases and decreases. But Lewis, let's stop the pessimism for a second. What's the alternative? Well, my dear friend, the alternative is already on the board. Curiosity. In order to enact the process of becoming aware of the need of yours this bad habit is meeting, and then proactively work to change how you're meeting this need, you need to catch yourself in a lovely angelic pose whenever you fall from grace, from your... Oh, sorry, I don't know where I'm going with that. But you need to catch yourself, genuinely, with awareness. You relapse into your bad habit, you're always going to feel guilty because you know you have transgressed and you have missed the mark. But if you replace the judgment with our lovely friend, curiosity, and you sit in your guilt after you've done your bad habit, no matter how reprehensible you feel, and you ask, as annoyed as I am with myself for having done this bad habit, and having continued to do this bad habit over all of these years, I'm clearly trying to take care of myself in some way, albeit it's not very productive. There's clearly something that keeps me coming back to this bad habit. There's clearly a purpose that it is serving. What is that purpose? And you investigate with the perspective of a curious scientist, not an angry drill sergeant. And you explore. And that exploration leads you to a new place of acceptance. You accept that you have this problem, and you accept that you are actively trying to meet the need of the habit, and you're trying to approach the situation from a different angle. But a quick note on acceptance. To accept something does not mean you approve of it. I'm not asking you to accept the situation you're in, which is battling this bad habit. I'm not saying that's synonymous with you want to approve of it, meaning you want to continue to do it. No, because you'll find that as soon as you enact the curiosity to find the underlying need, that leads to you accepting the situation. And because you're proactively working on trying to meet that need now that is underlying this bad habit, that leads to behaviour change. And behaviour change means you break the cycle. That's what we mean when we differentiate between curiosity and judgment. But to really help this point of unmet needs sink in, let me chuck a load of needs on the board and illustrate it one point further. Okay, we've got a needy board. This isn't a complete list of universal human needs. These are just some examples we're going to use to finalise this video and cover a deeper understanding of what needs are, unpack how they link to emotions, and then we're going to finalise with a killer question you can ask yourself to make your bad habits go poof into thin air. But first of all, let's cover an analogy to help you understand needs at a deeper level. Think about human needs as if they are the different parts of a car. Now, in order for a car to fulfill its purpose, to get you to your desired destination, there are some car parts the car 100% needs. But there are others it doesn't necessarily need, but if it has, it's going to make your car journey much more enjoyable. For example, the car 100% needs wheels, a steering wheel, it needs the engine to work when you put the key in the ignition, and you need the overall car frame for you to sit inside. If it doesn't have them, you're not getting to your desired destination. You're going to have to walk. Other car parts, like a radio, air conditioning, nice leather seats, or a nice lovely companion to tell you stories along the way, aren't 100% needed, but if you have them, your car journey is going to be much more enjoyable. It's the same with human needs. There are some, mainly in the context of health, that you 100% need in order to function and survive, such as sleep, shelter, nutrition, movement, and hydration. Others, however, are more like bonuses. You don't need them, but if you have them, your mental health is going to be better and your overall life quality is going to increase. For example, you don't 100% need the needs of to meet the needs of connection, love, conversation, routine, purpose, challenge. You could just go full monk mode, but you're going to pay the price with worse mental health and a worse social life. Now we've covered that analogy, let's briefly touch on what arises in the absence of an unmet need. Because so far throughout this video, we've been using that phrase a lot. Unmet needs, find out the unmet need underlying your bad habit, needs. It might have sunk in so far, but you might still have some gaps in your understanding of what we're talking about here. This will illustrate it better. In the absence of a need being met, what arises is a hole. If we take the need of social connection, the need of feeling like a valued member of a relationship or a community and having active conversation with people where you're demonstrating to them that they're valuable and vice versa. Let's say you're not meeting that need at the moment. What arises in its absence is a hole. And as humans, there are two ways that we can deal with this hole. One is very proactive, in which case, because someone commented the other day, Lewis, can you be more colour-coded when you're drawing things on the board? Let's draw that arrow as green. One way of dealing with this hole is very proactive. Another way, postman's here, is detrimental. When the hole exists, postman threw me off. When the hole arises, the proactive way of dealing with it is to sit in the hole and to familiarise yourself with the surroundings of it without bringing distractions into the hole. In other words, without bringing your bad habits into the hole to soothe you from the discomfort of being in a hole. So you sit in the hole, and if you sit in there long enough and you're present and aware enough to really notice the surroundings of this hole, what will arise? Oh no, it's getting a bit out of hand with all the colours. What will accompany you in that hole is an emotion, as some people say, an energy in motion. The emotion that will accompany you in that hole, if you're present enough to notice, will be the complete opposite of the emotion you would feel if that need of yours was being met. So in this context, if you had the need of connection being met, what would you feel? You would feel very happy, you would feel peaceful, and you would feel the flowing pulse of love throughout your life. What would be the opposite of that emotion? Well, loneliness. You would feel loneliness in the absence of social connection. And this highlights a really, really practical point on emotions. Why would that emotion accompany you in the hole that you're now in the absence of that need? Well, that emotion would accompany you because it wants to motivate you to go back out into the world and meet that need. Remember what we said, the emotion that accompanies you in the hole is the exact opposite of the emotion you would feel if that need was being met. We're going to cover another example to really illustrate this in a second. But that emotion wants to motivate you to either pursue something, in this case, social connection, and reach out to people, or avoid something. You are already on your side when it comes to helping yourself psychologically. So too are your emotions. Your emotions are feedback tightly linked to your needs, and they arise in the hole that sprouts up in the absence of this need. That's the proactive way of dealing with this hole. As uncomfortable as it is, you allow yourself space and silence in your life to give your emotions enough time to arise, and then you decode the emotions that you feel with the question of, what need of mine is this emotion trying to motivate me to fulfill? That's the proactive way. The very unproductive way, when that hole arises, and this is very understandable why we do this, and this is the purpose that bad habits serve us, The hole arises, you sit in it, it's very uncomfortable, so you distract yourself from being in that hole. You distract yourself from the discomfort of your need being unmet. You start scrolling more, or you engage in your bad habit, you light up a joint, you start drinking more because it's very uncomfortable to admit that there are needs of yours being unmet. And again, the principle, you want to pursue pleasure and avoid pain. You want to soothe yourself from this harsh reality. This is the purpose that bad habits serve, and I hope this illustrates it a little bit more from a practical point of view. And the last, most dangerous thing about dealing with the hole in this way, dealing with the hole in this way is no different from entering a hole as if you've got, with a virtual reality headset on. The reality around you is completely disproportional to the reality that you're feeding your brain. It's like an ostrich will bury its head in the sand to avoid a predator. That's what you're doing if you're in that hole and you're engaging in your bad habits. As understandable as it is for a human being to do that, because we want to escape our discomfort, you have to understand that the harsh reality is the longer you stay in that hole and the longer you engage in your bad habits, the deeper and deeper and deeper you dig that hole. Which means once you take that headset off and you realise, oh my God, this is dark in here, what has been going on? It's then harder to climb out of the hole. It's not impossible, but it's harder to climb out of that hole. It's harder because in this case, when you listened to your emotions straight away and you cleared the space for them to arise and you interrogated them based on the feedback of what is this emotion trying to motivate me to do. In this second case, because you're delaying the process in which you're listening to your emotions, because you're constantly trying to block them down and repress them, when you do finally take that bad habit off, or the lens of that bad habit off, what happens? The emotions come screaming back. They come all at once, which makes it even more overwhelming, which makes it even more likely that you're going to want to scurry away and escape them by engaging in your bad habits. They're going to come back with a vengeance, knocking on your door as if to say, hey man, we just wanted some attention. Now we're going to come all at once to really motivate you to meet this need. That's where things get tricky. That's the example of connection. Just to give you one more example, let's say you're not meeting the need of adventure, if that's an important need for you. Of course, the hole arises. You can sit in that need. You can sit in that hole. My belly is rumbling. Not sure if you can hear that. I should have just said, oh no, there's fire outside. There's thunder outside. You're not meeting the need of adventure. Hole arises. You sit in that hole and you cultivate present awareness to listen to what emotion arises. What emotion arises? Boredom. Remember, the emotion that arises in the hole will be the opposite of the emotion you would feel if you were meeting that need. If you're meeting the need of adventure, you feel novelty, you feel excitement, you feel pursuit, you feel adrenaline, you feel that sense of meaningful progress. What's the opposite of that? Boredom. You sit in the hole, boredom arises, knocking on your door as if to say, wow, it's a bit dull in here, isn't it? Maybe we should change some things and go out and do new stuff. How about that? But again, as in this example, if you stay in that hole, but you bring the bad habit of watching films all of the time, whatever the bad habit is, by the way, I'm not trying to be judgmental with these activities. Let's say you're watching Netflix all of the time rather than listening to the fact that you're bored and then using that as motivation to go out into the world and change your life. You're most likely going to try and fulfill that need unconsciously by watching films of action movies and actors who are living the life that you could only dream of, so you vicariously live this need out through them, rather than turning off the Netflix, sitting in that uncomfortable emotion of boredom and just realising, oh, I feel bored. What do people do when they usually feel bored? Go try and find something new and exciting to do. Sorry, I had to cut the video then because I had to go eat something because my belly was genuinely rumbling. But just to illustrate that point slightly further, when I was 16, my friend Melly used to drive illegally. I know we were gangsters and all of that, but we would spend the day at school and Melly would come and pick us up, you know, me and all of my mates, and we would drive around the local area, blasting our music, having a great time. But one day we spent the day in a town called Chatham, which is about 20 minutes from where we're from, in a town called Maidstone. We spent the day there, it was a great time, us 5 lads in the car again, blasting our music, but then in the evening we made our way back to Maidstone. So we're speeding across the motorway, still having a great time, 16-year-old lads, you know, high on life, but suddenly Melly's car's bonnet starts smoking as we're driving across the motorway about 80 miles an hour. So all of us lads who were passengers start freaking out, our anxiety sparks, we're now thinking, oh my god, we're going to die, especially considering Melly's driving illegally, but Melly is as cool as a cucumber. I'm sat in the front passenger seat to his left, look over to him and he's just like, don't worry lads, I know exactly what to do. So he pulls over to the side of the motorway, but all of us are still freaking out. So Melly gets out of the car, we all get out of the car with him because we don't want to be in a car that's potentially going to blow up any second. So Melly walks out over to the boot of the car, cracks the boot open. We all look inside, wondering why are you at the boot of the car when the problem is at the front of the car? And Melly shows us 10 5-litre bottles of water. He picks one up, calmly walks over to the front of the car, cracks the bonnet of the car, unscrews the lid of the water bottle and just pours the water on top of the part of the car that is smoking. So all of us are now freaking out even more, wondering if this is a pure mechanical thing to do, or is he secretly an engineer and knows something that we don't? So we ask him, what are you doing? Surely you should just call someone. But still as cool as a cucumber, Melly says, oh no, lads, don't worry, this is just the car radiator. Sometimes it overheats and I just need to pour water on top of it. We made it home in one piece. But Melly, linking it back to the bad habits, trying to soothe yourself while you're in the hole that is arisen in the absence of this need. Trying to soothe yourself there with your bad habits is no different from Melly pouring water on his car's radiator rather than taking it to a mechanic and being like, hey guys, can you fix this part of my car? Actually solving the problem is you meeting your needs, which is, of course, solving the problem long term, which is you sitting in that hole and then listening to whatever the emotion is trying to tell you. The short-term solution is, of course, sitting in that hole and distracting yourself from the discomfort, which only makes that emotion grow louder when you finally stop doing that bad habit. That was just a quick story I wanted to tell you. But now, really finalising this video in a practical sense, I want to leave you with this. The easiest way to figure out what need of yours this bad habit is meeting or soothing you from. The easiest way to figure that out is to simply ask yourself this question. After you now understand that to solve the problem you actually have to meet the need, otherwise you're just constantly delaying the problem with your bad habits, you ask yourself, what would have to be true about my life for this bad habit to not exist? Really, really introspect, and I'm being serious now. If you take the time to introspect on this question, you're going to solve the actual problem. And here's my guess. Here is my uneducated guess. Your answer to this question will likely be an activity. If you take the example of the bad habit of scrolling your evenings away into oblivion, let's say you're really struggling with that, but you ask the question, what would have to be true about my life for me to not be scrolling of an evening? Well, if I think about it for myself, in order for me to not scroll, I would have to have something else worthwhile doing in the evenings, which for me would look like connecting with people, having conversations, being in a relationship, perhaps romantically, or having an activity to go to. What's the theme of all of those activities that have arisen as my answer to this question? Social needs. I'm scrolling a lot in order to soothe myself from the feeling of loneliness and boredom. So maybe it's a combination of two things. I need to meet the needs of love, touch, connection, support, conversation, but most importantly, adventure if my scrolling is soothing me from the feeling of boredom. That's the most practical thing in this video. That is the key takeaway. As you ask that question more and more, you'll finally be able to understand this brilliant philosophical aphorism. Build a life you're not trying to escape from. That is the second key takeaway from this video. Maybe you've heard this quote before, maybe you're hearing it for the first time. Maybe it's sunk in as oh wow, that's such a great point, but there still might be a little bit of confusion in this quote. To really unpack what this means, all you have to realise is it means meet all of your psychological needs, or as many of them as you can. So the chances of you feeling uncomfortable or being in the hole that arises in the needs absence is decreased. So you don't feel the need to engage in your bad habit to soothe yourself in that hole or escape it. That's what building a life you're not trying to escape from means. And you build that life by continuously asking this question in reference to your bad habits. It's exactly the same as that famous rat study, the rat park. You put a rat in a cage where it has nothing to do but drink cocaine-laced water, it's going to drink itself into oblivion. But if you put that rat in a cage with nothing but abundant access to sex, play, other mates and food, it won't go near the cocaine-laced water. So this is what we will finally finalise on. The key question isn't to ask, why do I engage in my bad habits? Or why do people fall prey to addictions or bad habits in general? Wrong question. Why doesn't everyone engage in bad habits and addictions all of the time? Because there's enough suffering in life that we need to soothe ourselves from. But the answer to the latter question is, well, people aren't engaging in their bad habits because they're not living a life they feel they need to escape from. Meet your needs, and I promise you, your bad habit will go poof, because you'll be solving the root problem instead of the symptom. Let's leave it there. Thank you for your time and attention. Stay disciplined. Almost forgot what I was going to say then. Stay disciplined, playful, and dangerous. If anything was unclear, let me know in the comments. Or if you'd like me to talk about other topics, let me know in the comments. Adios, muchachos y muchachas.